A very good morning to all of you. I welcome you to session number 2 of our ICF interview series, and it's season 2 of the interview series, which we have titled Take Wing, May Your Editing Business Flourish, which has been conceived by Ganesh. He is the brain behind the interview series, and he will be talking to successful editors turned entrepreneurs. And today's guest or the person in the hot seat is Ambika Arvind or Ambika Shankar. So that's one question that Ganesh need to clarify about the surname. And Ganesh is a published author. He has published a book and several more are to follow. He is a writer, he is an editor, he has been into advertising, he conducts workshops for aspiring authors. So he is a multifaceted personality, and that's true for our guest
also.
Ambika Shankar also. So I leave it to Ganesh to find out more about Ambika and her business. So
Super.
over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you. Thanks, Vivek. And a warm welcome to all of you and a wonderful, wonderful morning. I hope all of you had a nice time today so far. Have had breakfast and you can settle back with a cup of tea now. So as I engage, converse with Ambika, and you all just mute yourselves. Mansi, can you just mute? Thanks. Lovely. And good to see familiar faces. Good to see some friends again. So like Vivek said, this is the second, hi Kaneez, hi. Second episode or second session of this series called Take Wing. And the idea is to spotlight business related aspects of editing and occasionally content writing and content development also. So our guest of today comes mainly from the content generation side. We thought that's an interesting adjunct or an interesting adjacent area to editing and writing. And I think quite a few of the freelancers in our community also do more than one thing. We're not just editors. So we do develop content or we have interest in content creation. So we thought it'll be wonderful to have Ambika over and speak to her, understand all about her journey, her business, the decisions she's made, and what she's looking forward to. So we'll just kickstart this. Ambika and I, when we spoke last week, so there was a brief moment of very intense connection because we both come from the same part of the country. That's Kerala. Although she's now a naturalized Delhiite, and she's got Delhi also in her genes, in her personality, in the way she comes across, but she comes from the same part of the world that I come from. So I think we got started off on that note. So let me start with this question, Ambika, before we, how did you come to be in Delhi? And can you just briefly tell us about your upbringing and, your experiences in Delhi and the initial years that shaped you?
So I was born and brought up in Delhi. My father came to Delhi when he was 15 years old. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So my father came to Delhi when he was 15, primarily to look for a job. Okay. He was the eldest of the 4 siblings in the family. So by default, he was he was the generation to sort of kickstart something different. My grandfather was an Ayurveda specialist and somebody who believed that he doesn't want to work under anyone. Okay. So somewhere it was left to my father to sort of come to Delhi and take up a job. And then he got his brothers to Delhi and, help them in their education, higher education. So I was, I'm a 1984 born. I was born in this place called Janakpuri. Okay. In Delhi. And from there we moved to RK Puram, where I spent almost my entire life, pre-marriage life, so to say. So my father, because he started working early, he could not sort of complete his education. And when I was in grade 12, he had to opt for a VRS because, his company was picking up people who were more educated and younger. And so I could say was the transition moment in my life. So I was around 17. And although my father never wanted me to work, but as the elder sibling, my brother is 7 years younger to me. So as the elder sibling, I was left with two choices. I could either study or I could, start helping my father. And I wanted to help him.
Yeah.
So, and of course, there was open university. But then again, there was this dilemma of missing out on a regular college life and stuff. But I decided to go ahead and work. But I had no degree and no experience. So I was like, who's going to hire me? So that's when, somebody said there is this aviation lawyer who wants a receptionist. And I was like, okay, why not? And I, in school, so a little bit about my school. My love for the English language was fueled by my English teacher when I was in class 4th, Mrs. Day. I mean, this journey cannot be complete without mentioning her, because nobody in my family reads. Nobody except my aunt, my eldest uncle's wife. She's the only one who sort of read something. Other than that, nobody has a reading background in my family. So for me to pick up books at a very young age was something very different in the family. I was not the usual lot who wanted to, settle for a government job. And even in the family gatherings, I used to be in one corner of the room taking a book and my Walkman. And I was always aloof. So I was never the one to engage in some kind of a banter. So I must credit my English teacher for inducing this love for English. And of course, we've all done our bit in, doing the school magazine or writing for it. But I was extremely involved in the debate society. I was involved in everything that, my English teacher did. And the way she taught us, the way she approached the language was something so different that I think it matters a lot when a teacher sort of, how a teacher introduces a subject to you.
Correct.
So I think that's where that's what made a difference. And then, so I had that little bit of experience of editing the school magazine, which I would not count in the professional domain as something that employers would look for. But then I took up that job of a receptionist with an aviation lawyer. So he promised me that I would get to edit a newsletter, which never happened in the course of the 1 year that I worked for him. So all I was doing was taking calls, and I was sitting in a garage. So how the clients that lawyers have are. Very, very different crowd. I was not used to. I was in a very protected environment, and here suddenly I had to face the world.
You were thrown open to the influences.
Yes, and what a world. And then I had to quit regular college, because I could not cope with both. So then I joined Annamalai University, and there was this professor through a mutual friend, we got in touch with the professor who said you can get admitted to direct masters. So I was like, okay, fine. I mean, I was trying to catch up any opportunity that I get to study, to read up or whatever. So he taught me for about 3 years, for 2.5 years that I did my post-graduation. So while I was studying, I used to start at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I had to go study and then come back to go to work. So at 6, I used to go take a 764 to Dwarka, come back by 8, and then get ready quickly and go to work, and then come back by 6 in the evening, complete my assignments, study. So it was that drill for about 2.5 years. It was a regular drill. So in these 2.5 years, my aunt, who was with the Energy and Resources Institute, Terry, Mr. Jayanthan is from Terry, is my colleague from Terry. So she said that they are looking out for interns in Terry Press. So that's where, I was like, no, they are not going to hire me. I don't have any experience. I don't know what I'm going to do. So there is no use applying. She said, no, just go ahead. I'm from the marketing side. So, just try your hand at it. They are anyway going to give you a test. So I went. I was like, okay, fine, if you say so. I went and gave a test. So there was Mr. Ishwar, who is also, a wonderful editor, also part of this community. So he gave me the test, and so I cleared the test, but they said that we are only going to hire you as an intern.
Okay.
We are not going to. And then I met the DG, the Director General. He said, see, you don't have a degree, and, you are not, you don't have any experience, but I am going to give you this opportunity just because of just because of your situation and what you have faced and what you have been doing. So that was it. That is the opportunity that I had to bag at that point. I was like, if I give it my all, then, I have a future. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Correct.
So I joined Terry, and I think for about a good 6 months, all I was doing is editing flyers. And there was this entire manual, an editing manual that Terry Press had, and I had to understand it. And I was not aware of editing symbols. I didn't know what they meant. Then there was Mr. Yatindra Joshi, who's also a part of the ICF. He's been my mentor. Mr. Ishwar, Mr. Jayantan, he was in the library, the Terry library then. So I have a lot of mentors in ICF itself who have been a part of my journey till here. And Terry, the 5 years in Terry shaped me, and I think I owe it completely to Terry for what I am today, because what I have done in Terry Press was a combination of so many things. We at one point we could be editing books, we could be editing journals, we could be writing for a magazine, we could be organizing events. So Terry was a sum total of so many things which I am right today.
It was your learning ground, right? You learned
absolutely. And I think
when you speak of Terry, I remember my first job too. I think there's something to be said for first jobs. Yeah, I think all of us have that special place in our heart for the first place we work for.
Absolutely, and more so if. And more so if it has helped you, come to a certain place in your life.
Correct. And the thing is, one may not realize it then, but because one is in the race and one has aspirations, and typically you're in the 20s at that time, so your frame of mind is very different. Yes. But it's when you come to the 30s and the 40s, and then you look back and say 15 years later, that job has given you so much, that place has given you so much.
Absolutely.
In terms of colleagues, relationships, hardcore nuts and bolts learning, all of that. Yeah, it's really, really nice. And the other thing I want to latch on, I can relate to what you said, is about the love for English. And there's a similar soft spot, I think, that many of us have for our English teachers.
Yes.
Whether that's in school or in college, a professor of English, a teacher of English, and the way she used to explain poetry to us, and the way she used to explain, short stories, and you'd see the story unfold in front of you. I think
there was this chapter.
How a teacher interprets a language or a subject, I think that really can make or break your love for that subject. Yes.
Absolutely true. And I think I still remember certain phrases and certain words she used to describe. So there was this chapter where there was a character called Babuli, who was stuck in the cob. There was this word which was complacent. So that word complacent, the way she explained it, how he was stuck. So how the cobwebs referred to the cobwebs in his life. So all those little things, the way she used to explain lessons to us, I think that was, and I'm still in touch with her and with her son. So that it's a very, very special bond that I developed with the language right from class 4. So I think, but I'm an accidental editor, I'm an accidental writer, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Because, I never set out. I had, till the time that this incident happened in my life, I had no idea what I'm going to do, because, that was not the point in time where I got to decide what I want to do. But looking back, I think I can't be happier about what happened.
You wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes, I don't think I would have it any other way. So yeah, that's not a very brief background, but that was
that's like how elaborate background. Nice. Yes. Okay. No, we loved it. Completely enjoyed it. So come to Terry, and from Terry you edited the newsletter that they had. What was it called?
So a lot of them actually. There was something on so mostly on energy, environment, and sustainable development. I started by doing this news journal called Tidy. TIDEE. Terry is very famous for its acronyms. All its newsletters and all its projects have acronyms. So one-page flyers primarily initially, and then I had Mr. Yatindra Joshi trying to tell me that this manual is your guide. This has to be absolutely in your brain. You should register it here completely for you to be able to edit. And that was the time we used to edit on hard copy. So we had that stand where you used to go page by page and edit.
Yes,
so
yes.
We didn't.
Symbols, all those.
Yes. We were not always sitting on the computer. So that was another that was something, again, that was different from what it is today. So there was journals, and from journals we slowly moved to editing books. I think I found editing books the hardest initially. I've cried in boardrooms. Like I said, I didn't know what to do. There were times when I've been clueless, because research work, the way they write, sometimes researchers wanted the way they have written it.
Yes,
So
yes.
they would not, to explain to them why a certain phrase cannot go this way, or why a certain grammatical usage has to be placed at a certain point, was very, very difficult for me. So then we went to the boss changed, our senior changed, and then Terry Press migrated to doing magazines. So they said, why not, let's do something on environment. So they brought out something called Terra Green, which had more in-depth stories as opposed to research papers. So they used to interview journalists. They used to pick up case studies and write it in a better way for the audience to understand. So sort of change in brand image. Then we did something called Solar Quarterly, which I handled entirely from end to end. So we had to source articles on solar energy. Again, a very boring area to be turned to something very interesting for the end user. And then sourcing of pictures. Then we organized the very first conference on printing and publishing in Terry. I was part of the entire organizing team, right from getting guests to explaining to people why this kind of a conference is important, to even hosting it. And I remember I was also around 7 to 8 months pregnant with my first child, and so I think seen the entire spectrum in Terry, from being a girl who was considered a child by her peers when I was only 20 to having a baby. I think I've just
they saw you grow up in front of them.
I grew up in Terry. I can say that I grew up in Terry. Yes, yes. So,
and after that, so because you mentioned the child, and the child would have come, maternity would have come your way. And how did the writing venture happen? When and how did that happen?
So I left Terry after the my firstborn, because I knew that I wanted to be with him for at least a year. Then I left Terry, and then I was freelancing for about so 1 year passed, and then I started freelancing with this agency called Word Experts from Pondicherry.
As an editor? Were you freelancing as an editor?
Yeah, and individual. Okay. So again, after childbirth, I was clueless. I didn't know what to do, because after a year, I was sort of on a break, and I didn't do anything to update myself on the industry. I was, as like anyone else, I was lost. And then I then taught English to students in the College of Nursing at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences for about a year. Yes. So my mother-in-law worked as a nurse in AIIMS. So she said that they're looking for an English teacher for nursing students, because, they need to communicate with their patients, or they need to communicate with everyone. So they're not very well versed with how to speak. So they said it's a subsidiary subject, but, we want somebody who can make it interesting. So then, I said, yeah, why not? I mean, that will brush up my language skills as well. So, that's the next place I went to. And all this while, I was also job hunting. I wanted to, again, go into copy editing. But then I also felt that the industry had changed and I was not updated. So I was clueless. So when I was taking these English classes, my father-in-law suggested I give the UPSC exams. Okay. And he said also try applying for a government job. In all good faith, he's like, no, stable, you'll be stable. Don't, stress yourself. You have a child. So and all this while inside of me, I was like, no, I don't want to do a government job. I don't want to get into UPSC, but I did give the IAS preliminary exams and cleared it. Then I didn't give the mains. I didn't want to go into it. So all this while, and then I had my second child in 2014. So in all these years, I freelanced with a number of agencies and companies, and a lot of my colleagues from Terry who had left, they had gone to other organizations. So they knew my work. They knew my work. They got back and they got back and they said, hey, we know your work. So, we are comfortable working with you. And you've done, you worked with us. So we don't need to explain what is to be done to you. That's how it happened. And then in 2014, after the second child, I was like, I have a certain number of years behind me. And that's also when that was a time when the startup sector was also booming in India. So I thought that, hey, why can't I start something of my own? And people do need content. And I had written a couple of articles for some clients, startups primarily. So I said that, I don't probably want to get into copy editing. I have done enough of copy editing. Now I have that strength behind me. I think a writer also by default needs to be an editor somewhere. You can't be a writer but not an editor. You can't write and say that, okay, the other person's going to check my work for me. That has to be done. But the basic grammar, the basic outline has to be very, very clear. So then I reached out to a lot of people through Facebook, social media, because there were a lot of these groups on Facebook. There were startup clubs. So they posted their requirements, and that's how I got my first break with a PR agency. So she had only just started a PR agency in terms of outsourcing content to somebody else. They had their internal writers, but their work had increased, so they wanted to outsource. And that's when I sort of told them that, hey, I can write. So she asked me for samples. I didn't have any samples, so I said I can write something for you. And that's how the very first client kicked up, and then there has been no looking back after that. So that's how a writing venture happened. And even then I was very skeptical whether I really want to change this into an agency, whether I want to hire people. I have no experience of handling people myself. So but it happened. That's how
But I'm assuming that the writing venture didn't happen as soon as you became a freelance.
No, it didn't. You
were a freelancer for some time. Then, so tell us about how you then finally made that leap and said, I will set up an agency now.
So 2015 and 2016 beginning, I started getting projects, but then they started, the number of projects started increasing. So I knew that I couldn't handle this on my own. But I wouldn't say there was any particular trigger, but I think I would say I took the leap of faith. And also I had a point to prove. I said, no, I'm not somebody who is made for a government job. I don't want to do this.
You wanted to prove your point to your father-in-law more than anybody else.
No, but I must say I have a very
gentleman was giving you good advice as a Tamil Brahmin family.
Absolutely, but I have an amazing equation with him, because we have these wonderful arguments. But if I had to say who was the trigger for me to start this, I would say it was him. Because he kept telling me, no, you have to be stable. I said, no, I'm going to show you that I can do something on my own. So that's how it happened. But I didn't realize that I would eventually start getting a lot of work offers, because one thing led to another, and I'm very happy to say that I haven't had to solicit business much, because a lot of it has been word of mouth, and I'm very, very happy to say that.
And the growing volume of business, I think somewhere finally made the penny drop, and you said, okay, let me now start this agency, right?
Yes. But one thing, so initially I started working with freelancers, but over a period of time, I got clarity on how I wanted it to progress, which we will talk about once you
Right. So early learnings when you had to shift from being an independent professional to an agency, and what was that early model? So now you can tell us about that, the working with freelancers or otherwise, how many people did you have? And now over time, how have you morphed that model? What's your model now?
Initially, as I mentioned, I worked with freelancers. It was people that I knew, my friends, who wrote, a couple of my friends who wrote, and then, people who knew somebody who could write. I tried working with a couple of people, but to be very honest, I was not satisfied, because with freelancers, with all due respect to freelancers here, I think in the content writing industry in particular, with freelancers, you can never be sure. Sometimes, a lot of times what has happened is they agreed to do the work, but it was not delivered on the deadline, on the set deadline. And then it was an issue with the client, because I'm somebody who's very particular about meeting deadlines. And the kind of people that we work with, their industry thrives on meeting the deadlines. For instance, PR. PR, if a journalist wants a content piece now, it has to be now. It can't be, even 5 minutes later, because then that opportunity is gone for them. So with freelancers, there was always this thing, and then they had this problem. Maybe ghar pe, something happened at their place,
yeah,
or
the schedules would be affected.
Yeah, their schedules or my schedules did not match. So and I'm someone who firmly believes that if you have to progress in a certain on a certain path, no matter what your personal situation is, if you really want to do it, you will do it irrespective. So from freelancers, and every content writing agency was working freelancers. I don't want to name the agencies, but they used to put up projects on their website, and then people had to bid
right.
for those projects. So the person with the most suitable bid would get the project. But then again, they used to come back and say that freelancer gayab ho gaya.
Right.
So how do you handle that kind of situation?
You cannot build reliability in your agency, and the reputation suffers.
Yes.
Because your clients' operations are then jerked by whatever happens.
Absolutely. And I was sure that I didn't want to go into the SEO content writing bit, at least initially, because every other agency was doing SEO writing. Every other agency was doing content for digital marketing agencies.
Right.
The niche that I identified, the requirement that I identified was thought leadership content.
Mm-hmm.
And for thought leadership content, my writers had to come from a certain background, and I needed to be sure that they are with me, in terms of the projects, and I could get back to them at any point in time that I wanted to. Right. And that is how I transitioned to a full-time model. I wanted to get writers who are with me full-time. I hired them, and I started with one writer, and today I have 3 more with me. So we are a team of 5 people. Right. And so that's how the transition happened. Initially, it was freelancers, but after a lot of dilly-dallying, after a lot of these challenges, I decided to push it into a full-time model.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned that you did not want to take up SEO writing, and I completely agree with your observation that there are so many content mills out there. So much of content being churned out there, and so many people competing for the same slice of that pie. Yeah. So, did you go through a conscious, systematic decision-making process, and mapping and understanding the industry and what was happening, and then saying no to some segments and yes to thought leadership? Was that kind of systematic, or did it happen in some other
No, I would say it was systematic, because again, see, the people that I started writing for initially were my colleagues from my organization. So they all came from a senior background. The kind of content they wanted was not SEO. It was very niche. So they wanted articles. Yeah, they wanted articles which spoke about their industry, their thoughts. So I didn't want, that's how it started. And then there were startups who came to us, and even those startups wanted content and from writers who understood what they're trying to convey. So that is how this whole, and the idea was to become a bridge between brands and their audience. Right. Yes. And SEO, I'll talk about this later, but SEO content has also changed now. It's not how it was earlier. So I was sure that, when every other content agency is working with digital marketing agencies, how are we any different? What is it that I want to differentiate myself as? And that's how it became thought leadership. And PR agencies, the articles that we write for PR agencies are for very, very senior level people. So, I could be writing for a Dr. Naresh Trehan at one point. I could be writing for the CEO of a tech company at one point. Right. I have to know what their thought process is. Right. Sometimes all we get is a topic. They may not give us anything more than a topic. So we have to use our understanding of the industry. We have to read up on a lot of stuff that has been written by them before earlier. So at any point in time to write one article, we need to do at least 1 to 2 hours of research. Correct. And that research has to be absolutely on point, whether it is in terms of the statistics that we are quoting, whether it is in terms of the thought process or the idea that the person wants to convey through the article. So that is something that not a lot of content agencies are doing. And I did research a lot on that front. So it was a very, very calculated decision to, do thought leadership content.
Yes.
And
look at
now
all the kinds of niches and contents and then rule certain out and say, this works better for me. This is probably
Absolutely. And the demand was also more at that point. I would say the demand is still there, but people came back to us and said that, it's all plagiarized. We asked them to write, they copied from the internet and they give it to us. There is no plagiarism check. They don't know what they're writing about. They don't know what they're, what has to go. So then we started building processes. So now we have a briefing document in place which is sent out to the clients. which talks about the topic that they want to write on. It talks about the audience that they're targeting. It has a column for the points that they want to convey through the article. And then it has any references that we can go back to. So once this process is carried out, we don't have to go back and disturb the client time and again.
It gives you a very good starting point. And
yes.
clarity on what needs to come out.
Yes. And so all these learnings have also been from my clients. So I said I had zero experience in this area. So a lot of clients, so my peer clients, 2 of them were very senior. So this briefing document idea was also from one of them. So they used to send us a briefing document which had all this in place. So I said, hey, why can't I adapt this to my process?
Right.
Because we don't want to go and disturb the client's time and again and say that, hey, we need stats. We need this, we need that from you. So over and above that briefing document, if there is something we need, we get back to them. Otherwise, we are on our own. So from research to proofread content, we are on our own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This thought leadership space is very interesting because of another peculiar dimension, which is that of the voice of the author. All right.
Yeah.
When you write for them, you write as them, practically as them, right? So how do you manage that? And what have been some of your experiences? Not so that a Naresh Trehan's voice is not the same as somebody else's voice. How do you bring in those nuances?
Yes. So there's this very, there's a post that I saw on LinkedIn recently where somebody said that, if you are a thought leader, why would you hire an agency to voice your thoughts? Why wouldn't you write it yourself? Right. So if there is something in my field that I want to convey, I would rather convey it myself. Why am I dependent on a ghostwriter to convey it? So that got me thinking because so far I will be honest and I would say that we've been quite successful in terms of conveying the thought because we, like I said, we read a lot. And I think that's the very first step to read up, to know about your client. You have to go beyond the brief. You have to go beyond the brief. Often what we do is we rely on what the client has given us and we don't research beyond that. So I think it's very, very important to go beyond the brief. And that's something that has been my mantra ever since, when I'm briefing my writers also. If you are told to do this, don't just stick to this, go beyond this. And I think that's how it, that's what helps us to, get the author's voice right. Of course, there are places where we can't. Sometimes we've had whole entire revisions in articles because the client comes back to us and says that this is not what I wanted to say. But I think that's true of everyone. When you get a topic and only when you start writing on it, do you know what you want to convey?
Yes.
So even when, a CEO or a founder comes to us and says that, hey, this is what I want to convey, they don't really know how to put those words and thoughts into words. So that's where we help them. So what we have started doing now to counter that issue that you mentioned, how do you manage to become the voice of the author, is to give them an outline.
Okay.
We go back to them and tell them that we are not going to start writing the article. What we will do is we're going to give you a list of points. This is what we're going to write. And if this resonates with what you are going to say, then please give us a go ahead. We will start writing. And if there are any anecdotes, if there is anything specific that you want to convey, please tell us. Please tell us beforehand, so we know how this entire thing is going to be structured. So I think that's how we are, bridging that gap.
So how is your, you said you're a 5-member team now, right? And 3 of them are writers. That's right?
Yes. 3 of them are writers. Actually,
one sec. That brings me to an interesting question that your point, which is that your husband has also invested in your company.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Invested. So he's not just at home as a co-parent for your children or as your partner in life or your spouse, but he's also your business partner, right? And he's invested in it.
Yes.
Now, that brings to my mind 2 interesting aspects and questions. One is, A, how did this come about? What conversations and what realizations led to this happening? B, what strengths does he bring as a partner, as an investor to the company? All right. And 3, how do you manage the personal relationship and the business relationship? So there are 3 aspects to his presence.
That's a very, very interesting question. Okay, I'll go point by point. One is what led to him investing in the venture. So again, content writing, I tried to look for investors, at least in terms of the working capital that I needed, because after a point, I will tell you how it started. Payments are an issue. No matter how much you grow, payments are always an issue.
And even with the best of the clients, the most reputed clients.
Yes, even if you put a penalty clause, no matter how much you go back and interact with them on a one-to-one basis, payments are always an issue. So we have a set deadline for our payments. Despite that, they don't sort of come in on time. So I wanted to be sure that I have a working capital ready, because I can't go back and tell my writers that, hey, I can't pay your salary because I don't have my payments, right? So I wanted to be sure that I have the working capital in place, so that even if my payments come in 1 week later, I have paid my writers. They have their salary. They can be, and for them to work tension free, I need to assure them that they will be paid on time.
Yes.
And initially I've had a lot of challenges in terms of payment, so I didn't want to face them anymore, and that's when I started looking out for people who could help me. I once even thought I will try crowdfunding, but then I was like, who's going to give me crowdfunding money for my own startup, and why should they? So then I dropped that idea. I approached a couple of people, but then they just got back to me saying that we will get back to you, and nobody did. And until I think about a month or two back, I was very unsure what I'm going to do. Then I approached Arvind, my husband. I was like, he had initially floated this idea. He said, why don't you involve me in some manner, even if it's in terms of the finances. He's very good on the financial front.
Okay.
So I said, yeah, I'll see. I didn't, I wanted to handle everything on my own then. Then finally, I came around to doing the same thing that he said. I said, okay, fine. Are you sure you want to invest? Because this is at home, so I know that I don't have to go to an external person to depend for the finances. But then we also had that personal and professional equation thing going on. So he said, okay, let's do one thing. Let's make this part very professional. I will invest in your venture, and I'm not going to invest completely. I'll invest in parts. So if a certain amount is coming to you this month, the rest of it will come after 6 months. And then you have to take me as an investor. We signed a contract, and including the and I said, I'll pay this money back to you. It's not that I take it and forget about it. So I said, I'm going to pay this money back to you in EMIs. So we decided on the EMI. We decided on the duration of the EMI. We have a contract in place. So whenever we discuss the professional part of it, we are not husband and wife. He's the investor. I'm the investee. I'm the company that he invested in. Yes. So we were very clear that the questions that he asks, I have to answer them. So, so I made a proper balance sheet. I made a income expenditure sheet, and I showed him where I'm going to, where I plan to stand in a couple of months from now. What is the kind of income that I'm expecting? What is the kind of outflow I'm expecting? And how am I planning to counter any exigencies, any cash deficits and stuff. So I made a proper. That's the first time in my life that I have made an income expense sheet. I'll be very honest now, because up until then he has been after my life to say that make this, make that, but I never did. But I think somewhere I thought that I have to take this step to be able to move forward, in terms of the venture. So that happened. We have a contract in place, and we are very clear on that front in terms of managing our personal and professional equation. When we are not. When we are interacting for the venture, he's the investor and I'm the company that he's invested in. So we're very clear. I think, yeah.
So I can see that has brought in discipline and focus on financials, on certain metrics, which I think are very important for a venture, even if it's a small venture. It's very difficult to run without goals, to run without keeping tabs on your expenses and what is going to come, what's going to go. So I think that discipline he's brought in.
Just one more thing, at the risk of sounding very gender biased, but I think women do not give enough importance to managing finances. Somewhere they know that it will be taken care of at some point. They do work. They've started working. Ma'am is kind of disagreeing. I'm talking about myself and the women I know in my life. It's not a general statement. It's not a general statement. I'm not generalizing here, but somewhere I think we need to also understand that we are as much capable of handling finances. We need to do it. It's very, very important. And that's something that I have realized in this journey, that, if I do not know how to handle my finances, I can't run a venture. It has to come from within. It's a very, very important part of running a venture. And as an individual also, it is very important to make that progress sheet, to know what is coming in and to know how much is going to go out. And how will you account for any deficits? That's a very, very important aspect, and that's one learning that's the most important learning that Arvind brings as an investor to my venture. That financial discipline is something that I did not have so far. Although I was earning, I didn't know how much I was spending. I didn't know how much was going out.
Where's the money going? How much is left?
Yes.
And also it gives you some clarity on the future, which is critical again. Otherwise, we see 2 months later, So you need to know what's going to happen in November or December. What is the forecast for that? Some sort of idea, right?
Absolutely.
So this thing about women that you mentioned, I think it's just a matter of conditioning, Ambika, the way I've seen
it is. No, I agree. See, which is why I put that disclaimer.
Sorry. When it comes to business, so you have to do what you have to do for anything. All right. Now, if you're saying that I want to be a business person, there are X number of things to be done in order to run a good business, right? A successful, vibrant business. So whether that's man or woman or anybody else, whatever be the gender, I think those have to be done. Now, the problem is that time and again, this has been drummed into our ears that men are more capable or only capable of doing certain things and women not certain things. So I think that's good. I think people like you and the more such stories come out, I think we need to erase those differences, Those differences are purely mental.
Yeah. So which is why I put that disclaimer, I'm not trying to generalize. It's not a stereotype that I'm mentioning. Probably the way I was brought, I always had somebody to handle my finances. It was my father. So he never, I didn't know where the money was going or, because he was always there to provide. And then once he lost his job, I had to work. So then now what do I do? So even then he handled my finances. So after marriage, I knew that Arvind was there. But till the time I started on my own, I didn't know how to. And up until recently, I was very unsure. But I think this one financial discipline that he ingrained in me, it has been a very, very important learning this year because, I knew where I was going. Once I decided to take that investment from him, I had a clear picture of where my venture is going, where I have been so far, and where I'm headed towards in the future. So that was something that came in as a learning, very, very important learning.
Lovely. So when you step back a little and look at the content landscape, you see that there is an explosion of content. Of all forms, all kinds of content out there. So, and there are many, many different kinds of content generating, content development agencies also. Independent professionals are there, agencies are there, large agencies like advertising agencies and networks are also getting into the space. So, how do you differentiate a networking, a writing venture now, today, after all these learnings and you've evolved, come some distance into the journey? You mentioned thought leadership, you mentioned picking a certain niche, right? How do you see yourself in relation to your client? Why do they come to you? Why do they stay with you? How have you positioned yourself vis-a-vis them and their needs?
See, content has qualities of utility, purpose, and objective. Right, and I think it's a very, very, very important medium of a connect between brands and their clients. Like I said, if I'm a brand and if I want to reach out to my my audience, how do I do that? And I think content has forever been a very, very important medium in whatever form. Be it written content or audio or video or whatever. And I think every industry that is in operation will need content to convey its and how we differentiate ourselves is that again, thought leadership content, I feel, is not everyone's cup of tea because you have to have a very, very deep understanding, if not the industry, then the client. If I'm the industry, of course, when you're writing, you will obviously research and write. But I think it's very important to understand your client and go beyond the brief again. If I'm, for instance, it could be something as simple as say, I don't know, a topic on what is organic farming or why is it important. Now, if that topic is coming in as a blog, then it will have a different context. But if I say I am Hari Menon, the founder of Big Basket, how am I going to write it? I'm not going to say what is organic farming. I'm not going to define organic farming. I have to set a context. And then somewhere there's a brand plug-in without promoting the brand. So thought leadership content, there's a very thin line between promoting your brand and conveying the message. I think that's where we are different. So you can't, you have to promote the brand at the same time, also convey and also build a thought leadership for that brand. And that's how we are different. So that's what we do. And creativity, quality, and clarity is how we differentiate. So your thought leadership content cannot always be boring. It doesn't have to be boring. Sure. It can be very interesting. Quality is something that every content, every person who's looking for content is looking out for, and that's that's something time and again that we have got a feedback on, saying that we approached 4 other agencies before you, and they come back to us and say that we will give you quality, but there is no quality in their work.
Right.
So when I say we are different, because right from deliberating with the client on the topic. So for instance, if I feel that the topic may not be suited or it is not suitable for the audience that they're targeting, we go back to them and tell them that, hey, you can probably change this topic to this, or you could take a different approach. So we don't just limit ourselves to taking the brief and then writing
and executing it. No, so you put your thought into it.
Yes. So we sort of brainstorm with them, and then clarity of thought, clarity of what you want to convey, and clarity in terms of the industry that you're targeting. So you can't just pull in random facts and push it into the article and give it to them. So that's where we are different. And then you have to answer 5 things in a very precise way. So what, where, when, why, who, and how. Okay. So these are the questions that the audience wants clarity on, and that's how you can provide maximum value to the consumer. So we like to call ourselves as the voice of the brands that we work with, and to make it a bit more contextual. If you've seen the movie 3 Idiots, there's this line where he says, "Bol wo rahe hain, par shabd hamare hain." But that's a very very thin line, because what he ends up speaking is not what he actually was trying to write. Yeah. So that blooper has to be avoided somewhere. So to make it a little more contextual, that's how I describe ourselves.
And now with various different forms of content coming, have you also moved away from just doing textual content? What other new forms of content are you dabbling with? What are you creating for clients?
Yeah. So
what's your content mix today like?
Yeah. So there was a point where thought leadership content is all brain. There could be there may be good money, there may not be good money. Now, so the clients in India and the clients outside India are very different in that respect, because clients outside India, somewhere they don't ask you a question on the money part, so they will pay you. If your content is good, they will pay you. That's my learning. I'm not sure of the experience that others have had. But what I have experienced is in the Indian service provider industry, clients are a bit hesitant, they're very hesitant to pay you. They will, they will sort of bargain with you in terms of the per word. Yeah, the per word rate. But clients outside are different. We transitioned to other forms of content. Initially I was a little skeptical on whether I want to also go the usual way and do audio and video, whether I wanted to get into graphic designing also, because everyone else was doing it. But after a point, I had to divide my work into brain and money. So very honestly, so I needed my intellectual satisfaction, but at the same time, I needed money to thrive.
Correct.
So I had to divide my work into 2 parts. So when I say money, I think that's where your SEO content comes in. You may think so, because the number of words are more, the volume is more, so you can pick up more work. Right. So thought leadership, so we've even sometimes done 100 thought leadership content, 100 pieces of thought leadership content in a month. Sometimes that's the kind of volume that we get from PR agencies, at least. That's a lot. So, but with SEO, you get a certain time to write, but the volume of work is more, and therefore the money. And that's why I decided to diversify, because you have to also build your business. Right. So I can't always say that I'm very happy with being intellectually satisfied. So I also needed to take a look at the money part of it, and that's why I diversified. And again, so I think even much before COVID struck, people's attention spans were sort of decreasing, and I don't think every one of us has the patience to go through a 500-word blog. Correct. Or a 1,000-word blog, and which is why a lot of blogs have the the time mentioned. This will take you these many minutes to read. And we wanted to be able to create content, engaging content, which people can just see and listen to. And why not? I mean, promising segments are podcasts and regional content. Regional content is a different ball game, which is something that I will talk about later. But audio is certainly having its moment, and so is visual content, because people and I think visual also not so much. Audio, because I think after COVID, people are tired of looking at their screens. They don't want to be on their screens constantly. And I think a very good example of that is Clubhouse.
Right.
So Clubhouse has picked up majorly. After podcasts, I think Clubhouse is the next big thing. Because, you can talk, you don't have to be on video constantly. You just need a phone and internet connection, and you can talk. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about in written content. You can do a one-on-one interaction with people. So I think the fact that it takes the best parts of visual and traditional social media is what made me venture out. So you can combine the best of written content and visual content into spoken content. So which is why I think we decided to diversify. And I think when I decide to call myself an integrated content development startup, I can't just be writing.
Correct.
I have to increase my offerings at some point. So I think that's how.
And you had to move across formats, across media formats.
Yeah.
Kind of come across as a composite creator.
Absolutely. But again, keeping thought leadership as the base, because even in terms of the SEO content that we're getting, people say that don't just stuff keywords into the article and give it to us. I could be writing about the flower season in Japan, for instance. So we work with this agency called Neil Patel Digital, which is one of the biggest digital marketing agencies. So they wanted us to write about the cherry blossom season in Japan. And it was a 3,000 word article. It was an SEO article with so many keywords stuffed in, but they didn't want us to just take content, stuff it with keywords and give it to them. They said it has to have a content. I mean, why would people go to Japan to visit the country in the cherry blossom season?
Correct.
So again, that's another differentiating factor. When we write for digital marketing agencies, we don't do SEO content to just put keywords and give it to them. We build context and we write.
An article or a piece of content is not just a set of keywords, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it has to have a soul, and then you tweak the keywords and bring them in later. Absolutely. That's the next step.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So give us an idea of what kind of clientele do you have in India and in abroad, and for them, if there are different categories of work that you do, because you mentioned PR agencies and press notes, then you mentioned thought leadership. So can you just categorize them and tell us what does it look like today in India, abroad?
Yeah. So most of our clients are PR agencies, because through them we get to work for a whole lot of clients. Because we write on. I would categorize ourselves a writing venture as a sector agnostic content development startup, because we don't write on one particular topic that is given to us. So we are working at a given point. We are working with clients from the technology sector. We are working with clients from the healthcare sector, health tech sector, e-commerce. There's food. There's fashion. I have writers who have never written on fashion, writing about jewelry, lightweight gold jewelry, and why the market for lightweight gold jewelry is increasing.
Nice.
So and that they're not women who are writing, they're men. So we that's why we are sector agnostic, and we deliberate. When we get a topic, I don't just randomly allocate it to anyone. I ask them whether they would like to write on something that they have not written before, and they are more than willing to, because as writers we need to constantly challenge our creative abilities, is what I feel. If we just stick to writing about one particular industry, so I think it's very important for us to write on different subjects, and that's what we do. And even when one person has written the content, we circulate it amongst ourselves and see where we can improve. So if I'm writing something, it goes to maybe all three of the writers or one of them, and then I take their inputs and ask them if there's something more that I could sort of put in. So we do authored articles, we do op-eds, we do thought leadership, industry articles. Now, industry articles talk about the market, whereas opinion pieces, I'm sure you know what opinion pieces are. Then there are authored articles. We do press releases. So I think every content piece is now outsourced. We ghostwrite. I mean, can you think about ghostwriting a press release? Journalists are not writing press releases. So, and then there are spokesperson responses. So if somebody is asking me about a certain development in my company, I'm ghostwriting that for them.
For the spokesperson of the company.
Yes. So the CEO has to talk about, say, the development of data centers in India and why NetMatch, so why their company is a differentiator. And I'm answering those questions on behalf of them. So those are the kind of things. We do white papers, we do quotes. So if, for instance, there's the budget, we do pre and post budget reaction quotes. And if there is a specific announcement from the government, if there is an industry which is impacted by it, then the people from that specific industry, the companies, the spokesperson wants to come out and talk about it, give a reaction quote. I mean, that's all pitched by the PR agency. So the PR agency will reach out to the media and say that, hey, we have a representative who can talk about this particular development. So that's something we do. We do profiles. We do what else do we do? We do infographics for them. We do we sometimes we do pitch notes. We do pitch notes for PR agencies.
Okay.
Yeah. The PR agencies don't write their own pitch notes either. So we write them for them. We write those for them because they say, you understand our work better than we do. So hey, why don't you write the pitch note? You know about the client.
Very little that has not been outsourced. No? That's what I'm hearing from you, right?
Yes. Which is why that LinkedIn post about why are you a thought leader if you are outsourcing your own content to somebody else? I think it's about time management, because a lot of times you want to write, but you don't have the time to write it.
The bandwidth, the space.
Absolutely. So if you have an agency at your disposal that is going to write your stuff out for you, which is going to voice your thoughts, how you want them to be projected, then why not? I mean, I would be happy to do that. And people are very happy to not hire internal content writers, but outsource it, because somewhere they can negotiate. With an internal content writer, they say we have to give them a fixed salary.
Pay them a full salary, yes.
So and post-COVID, this is even more so. So I said we do white papers. I have not been taking too many copy editing assignments because we don't have active copy editors on board. But that is something that I'm looking at, because after a point, so far everything that comes from the writers is QC'd by me and then sent ahead to the client. And I think even when I grow beyond this, I plan to still QC everything that the writers write and then send it, because that's another differentiator that's another way that I want to be standing out from other agencies, because you could name it as my obsession with quality or ensuring that only the best goes out to the client. Right. But I'm going to make sure that even going forward, that is something that I do. So so this is the entire list of things that we do. And of late, and recently we just also wrote an RFP for a client who was pitching to another agency for a contract. So those are the kind of things that we get. Basically everything, any kind of content. Yes. So and then somebody. So people could be having an interview. They in the next half an hour you could be speaking on national media. So they want us to give pointers on what they should speak about.
Quasi-scripting their responses, the interviews.
Yes. So those things as well.
So something tells me that you don't want to grow into one Leviathan. You don't want to become one huge content generating agency, because you want to keep it of a certain caliber. Keep the soul alive. There has to be your personal touch, right? Am I reading you right? So
absolutely.
What have you seen for yourself in the next 2-3 years? What's going to happen? What is the writing venture going to evolve like? How are you going to stabilize?
Like I said, I want to continue with a small team of people, primarily because of quality concerns, because in a lot of organizations, I see that, once there are various levels of governance, somewhere the quality suffers. So I want to be able to have that little control over the team as far as possible. When I say control, not obsessive control, but at the same time to be able to manage
level of control.
To be able to manage the team in a way that, I have a one-to-one connection with everyone who's working. So I don't want to grow up to be a big agency that is promising so much, winning many awards and saying that, and then after a point dissolving the primary purpose of what we set out to do. So I think in 2 to 3 years from now, I would be probably categorizing my venture into different buckets of content. So I will have a section. So at the best, I could have one person managing the thought leadership bucket and maybe 2 people under him or her, and then one copy editing wing, because that's an absolute must, and then one audio visual content wing. So, 3 broad areas. And we will also be trying to venture out into PR. When I say PR, digital PR, not active PR, because a lot of people come back to us and say that they want their online presence to be managed. Again, LinkedIn, because they want to build a thought leadership for themselves, but they're not able to find time to manage their profiles or or what they want to write. So that's also something we'll be diversifying into. And podcasts is a very, very is a thing that is very special to me, because I want to be able to start this series called Everyday Entrepreneurs. That's something I've been pursuing on social media, but it went into a halt because of COVID. And then I started, volunteering for COVID, the COVID relief. So it was put on a halt. And I think, so that's something that's very close to my, for instance, my house help, Lali, she is also an entrepreneur. So for instance, so we give this thing called Vetalabak in South India every Friday. So my mother-in-law gives her this, little tambulam where you have 2 pieces of haldi. So she collected all these pieces of haldi for over a year, and then after a year she powdered the entire thing and used it for her son's haldi. So that's an example of entrepreneurship. I mean, if that's not entrepreneurship, I don't know what is. So we have many of these little examples of entrepreneurs in our daily life who are not able to come out because they don't have a voice. They don't have a platform to come out. So that's something that I want to get into. And also maybe start a small academy to train young children. And I'm not saying young children from good backgrounds, but children who are not very privileged to get the kind of education that we do, and to be able to help them develop life skills and maybe also become entrepreneurs later in life. Because at any point in time, all of us need to be self-dependent somewhere. And I think every one of us has an entrepreneurial spirit in us, which needs to be nurtured, especially children. I see that in my own children, because they know who my clients are. I take suggestions from them. When I'm working, they're around me. So they know that if I'm, say, working with a portier, if I'm writing a certain article on the health sector, so my elder one will come up to me and say that, hey, this is something that you could look at. So why can't I take suggestions from them? That's something
that happens a lot with my son also, and I think it's very important for us to seed, to have those conversations with them now, and to enable them to think, to encourage them to think and participate.
Absolutely. And somewhere, if these 2 age groups mingle, the older, not so recognized entrepreneurs in daily life with the younger ones who want to do something in their life and turn, they have these little ideas which can actually become big business ideas. So if these 2 age groups can mingle, I think it will be a blast. I want to be able to do that later in life. And and also utilize. So my husband is working in the geriatric care segment. He has a startup which trains caregivers for taking care of the elderly people. So I think the elderly have a lot of skills which are not utilized after a certain point. For instance, my mother-in-law is a nurse. So a lot of times my husband's venture takes her advice on how, nurses training should be conducted. And a lot of these aspects which are missing from the kind of training that is given today.
Conventionally given, yes.
Yes. So those kind of things can be utilized to train the younger generation or children who are not from, like I said, not such privileged backgrounds, for them to get a proper degree. So all this can be mingled together and we can help them, progress in life in some way. So that's something that I'm looking at later on.
Superb, man. Superb. That's a very, very colorful palette of ideas and desires, things to do. So I use the word energetic very consciously, in my LinkedIn post. So and this is where it comes from. I got this when we spoke on the phone the first time. Absolutely all over the place, all over you. Energy. Very nice. I have another question.
Ambika, you're far ahead.
Sorry.
Ambika, you're far ahead of your father-in-law.
No, Venkatramanji, I think for the situation in my life, I would not have reached here. And again, the primary learning from my in-laws has been that, whatever happens in life, never regret it, because it will, help in your life in some way.
No, I understand. See, you already said that you share a very strong bond with him. Okay, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, you have so many ideas. Okay. I mean, as Ganesh said, you can see that energy there in you. Okay.
Thank you.
I think you are surely, definitely you will make so many things happen. I don't have any doubts about that.
Thank you so much. That's a very lovely thing to say.
That's a thumping vote of endorsement from a veteran.
Yeah, she's so much, so full of energy and very practical ideas, I would say.
Yeah, correct. And so give us an idea of client contracts. So do most of your businesses, your clients, are you on retainers with them? So therefore there is a fixed set of people you journey with over a period of time? Or is there a good mix of a floating crowd also? And how are you paid, or what are the different models in which you're paid?
Sure. So initially we were on an monthly invoice basis. So whatever work we did in a month, we used to bill them at the end of the month, and then get paid for it. So far, I am not, I've not taken any advance from them. I don't take an advance. Even now, we don't work on an advance basis. So we don't even take a 50% advance for our work, because what I feel is only when the client is satisfied with the work that they do, then we take the payment. And if they are satisfied with the work, they will pay. They're not going to not pay. And we don't work with agencies which don't pay. I think over a time you develop an understanding of who's going to pay you and who's not going to pay you. So now what I'm doing is trying to get a retainership model with the clients that I've worked with for a couple of years now. For instance, there have been clients with us who've been with us for the past 5 years. So I've got back to them and told them that we will now start a retainership model, because it's beneficial for both of us. So what we are going to do is, for a certain number of content pieces that we do in a month, it will be the retainership. Beyond that, anything extra that goes will be billed on a per content basis.
Commensurately additional.
Yes, that's how we're going to do it. With some clients who come off only on a project to project basis, it's still an invoice payment only, because they don't have regular work. So the PR agencies that we work with, we have work every day. So they send us an Excel for an entire week. So when I say Excel, it has the content buckets very clearly categorized, and we know what we are going to do in a week. So with them, we go on a retainer model, and over and above that, we take payment on a per content basis. But then for a project to project basis, it's still invoice based payment only. And because I think because we don't take an advance, there is also a certain amount of trust that we have been able to establish with the client, because a lot of times they feel that you take an advance and then you disappear. So, that until you are going to get paid, you're not going to go away from the scene. So they have that trust in you. They know that, and we offer the first 3 revisions free of cost. So we don't charge for the first 3 revisions. Luckily, we've not had to go beyond first 2 so far. So, that's worked well for us. So first 3 revisions are free of cost. And if there are revisions beyond that, then again, there is a certain charge to that. And a penalty clause was put in place only last year after a lot of thought, because I had this hesitation. Yes, I had this hesitation. For the payment part, because if they don't,
you should have a penalty clause for iterations also.
Yes, we will do that. We are going to put that in place. But like I said, somewhere I was clueless on how to do this. But then, there's this very familiar saying in Tamil that only, when you get hurt and when you fall down, do you realize that it's important to not venture out like that. So that's how I learned. But I think that's how I've learned all my life through experiences. So here again, last year we put in place the penalty clause, and for late payments also henceforth we will be charging them, and for revisions as well. So most of the clients will be on a retainership basis, except those from whom we don't get regular work.
Nice. A thought actually, now that you've been in business for some time and you've developed relationships and stabilized and grown, do you think you can start asking for an advance? I'm thinking from the cash flow point of view. Why not ask for an advance?
I've thought about it too, but I think somewhere it's very personal also. It's something that hits me. It's my conscience. I'm not a person who wants to take cash money from them before I am satisfied of the work that I have delivered. You could say that comes from I don't know, being old school, but I am not somebody who prefers to take an advance only. I mean, I understand there's this cash flow thing and all, but that's also why I took that investment in the first place, to ensure that I have money with me. Yes, I have a buffer with me. So it's a very personal thing. It's got nothing to do with why not or why, but it's because I am very conscious of the fact that the client has to be absolutely satisfied with my output, what I'm offering them. So yeah, and if they are satisfied, then they are not hesitant to pay you either. I've not had clients coming back to me and saying that, now that you've given us the work, thoda sa 1-2 rupiya kam kar lo. Nobody has said that to me so far. So I think
very nice. Now tell us about Ambika beyond work. So tell us about your Carnatic music connection. When did you pick up the violin? Tell us about what keeps you going there, and also because I found this cross-pollination happen a lot with me and with quite a few others actually. What influence has music, pervasive influence? Does it bring to your life and to your work, to your creativity?
Okay, so
tell us about your connection first.
Okay. So you want me to talk about me beyond the writing venture, right? So I started learning music when I was in class 3. So my grandmother is the great granddaughter of one of the trinities of Carnatic music. He's called Muthuswami Dikshidhar. So I come from the Dikshidhar clan by default. Not something that I want to flash around, but I'm very proud to say that I belong to a very, very musical family. If not singers, then a family that is very musically inclined. My mother was an artist in the All India Radio Calicut, Kozhikode. She used to sing, and my family is completely into music. My grandmother sings very well, but in olden days there was this concept that the Bhagavathas never used to teach their own children. So all that my grandmother learned was from behind the doors, observing her father. So she used to sing. Yes. So she used to sing. My mother sang, but then after marriage, she didn't go to work. She didn't sing. So she had a huge family to take care of. But my father used to make her sing a lot. And I think even before, when she had her delivery pains, my father said, no, you have to sing first. Then only I'm going to take you to the hospital. So this was before I was born. So my mother keeps telling me that probably that's why you sing. And a lot of music is played in the house, Carnatic music, different genres apart from Carnatic music also, and different styles of singing. So I've grown up listening to music a lot. And in class 3, my father said, in the usual conventional South Indian family way, that dance or music. It's either dance or music for you. Choose. So Bharatanatyam, not so much, because they said that after a certain age you may not be able to dance. So let's, go for music. That's how I started learning. Initially, like every child, I was very bored. I didn't want to learn because it was the usual drill, learning the basics. And after a point, even my grandfather got frustrated and said that till when is she going to sing this whole, Sarigama thing? But once I started doing the more detailed forms of music, it started getting very interesting. Okay. And I had a break. So I have to credit my music teacher. She's my second mother. I just spoke to her even before this conversation. Yes. She comes from the Swadhitirnal College of Music in Kerala. Right. And her name is Mrs. Vasanta Krishnan. Okay. And her brother is from Terry. He works in Terry, Mr. Shankar. And so I was her first student when she started teaching music. And then there was a break of 1 year because she had some family issues. And then after that 1 year break, I joined this place called Delhi Tamil Sangam in Arkepuram, and she came back. So again, from class 5 till now, she has been my guru, and I've recently picked up the violin, started learning from my husband, who's a Carnatic violinist, and the disciple of Padma Bhushan, Professor T.N. Krishnan, a very, very...
He is T.N. Krishnan's disciple, lovely.
Professor T.N. Krishnan's disciple. And I've learned music from Sir till the time he was alive. He passed off. He passed away last October.
Correct.
So my musical journey I think my music has helped me in every way in life. Like I said, I told you I was a child with a Walkman and a book every time. Always with music, always with books, and in every family gathering there was music compulsorily. My brother is a full-time musician. He's a music composer and producer, but he never learned Carnatic music because he felt there was one Carnatic musician enough in the house. So he learned the basics. Then my children now, my older one is learning the mridangam, and my younger one is still deciding between whether to learn mridangam or the violin or vocal. And vocal music they know by default because I used to sing to them to make them sleep as kids, so they know all my kritis, whatever I have learned. Yes, they know all of it. So so my musical journey is largely because of my family, and I'm very, very thankful to my guru because she has literally fed us music. It's been, I was a student who never paid the fee, so she wanted to teach one student without any fee at all. So she picked me up, and I'm very honored because I have been with her like a gurukulam, like in a gurukulam system, because she used to pick me up from school, tell my mother to buzz off and say that I'm going to take care of her, don't bother about her.
Daughter's in my charge.
Yes, she will be with me, and I used to go to her place right after school and come back home at night, do my homework and all also at their place. And if there was a function like the Navaratri and all, then I was never coming back home. So I've
no wonder you call her your second mother.
Yes, literally been with her. And in Tamil Sangam, where she taught, she had about 180 students. Every time a student came directly from school for the class, she made sure that they drank milk. She fed them well before they started the class. Amazing. So she's been a wonderful, wonderful influence to me. And I think I'm very, they say that behind every successful woman, there is a man, behind every successful man, there's a woman. But I think behind me, I've also had an army of men to support me. Because in my house, there's never been that gender distinction, so to say. So and I think I've been inspired by all the men and women in my family. There's been even if there was no money, there was always encouragement to do and be anything that I wanted to be. So that's something that I'm very, very thankful for. And even now, like I said, my music teacher, she's migrated to the US with her children, but I'm still learning from her, trying to pick up. And music in the toughest of times, when I knew that, I'm not studying, I didn't know where I was going with my life. Music has been a very, very big source in terms of keeping me sane.
Yes, and I understand completely. And for me, music is like a palate cleanser. You know the palate cleansers. So that's like water, correct? So when you move from one kind of dish or food type to another, and you don't want the taste to overlap, or there's too much of one taste and you want to get rid of it. So that's where the palate cleanser comes in, right? For me, music is, and I can, over the years, I've very distinctly found what music does for me. It refreshes my mind, it cleanses my mind, and then I'm ready for the next kind of work or the next project or whatever it is that I must take up. And I can see that with music, without music in my life, I can clearly make out the difference.
And which is why I decided to start learning music therapy. Because everyone does concerts, everyone wants to become a Carnatic musician, but I wanted to be able to use music for something beyond that, because ragas have healing power. When I'm happy, I listen to a certain raga. When I'm particularly not feeling too well, I start singing some raga and I feel all right. So I said, why can't I use this thing to help people who are because I've had elders coming to me and saying that, hey, please sing, we feel better. So I said, why can't I be that source of, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, healing for them if they are going through a certain situation. Then music certainly helps you come out of it in one way or the other.
Yes.
So, and there's Dr. Sairam, who's my mentor. He's quite a well-known name in the music therapy circuit. I think he's the one who introduced the concept of music therapy through ragas in India. He runs a school called the Nada Center for Music Therapy. And that's how I decided to get enrolled and start learning. So,
All right. Lovely. Superb. Yeah. I don't know. Let me just look at the time for the first time now. In our conversation, I'm going to look at the clock. It's 12:20-ish. Okay, so why don't we just pause here and let's throw this open to the audience. And if people have questions, they can always ask. Are you going to ask on the chat box? I'm going to check the chat box. Deepthi had put up your hand sometime back. Was that by mistake or did you have a question, Deepthi? So let me open the chat box meanwhile, and I'm just going to read whatever people have said. Kanis says a little louder, please. I hope we have been quite loud all through. Kanis, I hope you will be able to listen to us. Yes, you know, Jayantan is already here, and he sent you a wish.
And I must take a moment to talk about Mr. Jayantan here.
Please do. Please do.
He is. I have no words for him, but there are a couple of people that before anyone asks me anything, or before anyone has is saying something, I want to really mention a couple of people. Like I said, starting from my English teacher in school, my music teacher, my parents, who have never forced me to take a certain direction in my life. My father was somebody, I lost my father 7 years back, but he was a person who didn't know what I was doing in life, but he made sure I have all the resources in place. So for instance, in 12th, I had science without maths. So, he never knew I didn't have maths. So on the day of my board exam, he comes to me and tells me that, okay, how's your maths preparation? I said, but I don't have maths. So he's like, oh, okay. So he used to get me 10 registers and a set of 20 pens. He said, you have everything now, you just study. And he used to wake up in the middle of the night, give me milk and all. And my father is somebody who's never done housework all his life. So he's, for him to be encouraging a girl child from the family to do something like this was something very close to my heart even now. And I think if he was alive, I would have probably put him in the chair as a finance manager or something in the venture, because that's something he loved to do. Same goes out to my in-laws. I think they've been a major source of inspiration. I was a very emotional person. I still am, but not as emotional. I'm a little more practical now. I have to credit my mother-in-law for it, because she's the one who put me on an autopilot mode, so to say, because she used to tell me that you have to take care of yourself first. Only then can you provide and support a larger
anybody else.
Anybody else. And she said, no matter what the situation in life, don't brood over what you could not get. Just try to see what you have and, make the best use of that and see how you can make use of that in your life. And my father-in-law is, I have no words for him. He's my 3 a.m. chai companion. Yes, very nice. So we've had some amazing political conversations, so to say. He supports a different party. I don't support that party at all, to not name anyone here. But we've had some amazing fights.
We can all guess which party they are.
Yes, we've had some amazing fights and things at 5 a.m. in the morning. And because my mother-in-law was a nurse, her waking up time is 8 o'clock. So she used to ask us to buzz off and, maybe go to the terrace and discuss or something. So, and then my music teacher, like I said, my friends, a whole lot of them who I have not been in touch with I was not in touch with for about 10 years, because I was still deciding what to do with my life. And my entire family, of course, anyone is incomplete without their family. My mentors from Terry, Mr. Ishwar, Mr. Yatindra Joshi, Mr. Jayantan, definitely Mr. Chakravarti, who taught me the nuances of proofreading. He was a proofreader at Terry Press. So many people that I have to credit, and my clients now, because I don't know the ABCD of writing. I didn't know the ABCD of writing a press release, but I have to give it to them, because so many things in terms of business aesthetics, in terms of how to manage a business, how to interact with people of different nature. I've picked up a little from everywhere, and that's shaped me into what I am today.
There's a beautiful irony in that, while we are supposed to be, we as in people like you, your agency, supposed to be providing a service to your clients, invariably you end up learning something from the clients also.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it, in fact.
That relationship is enriched as much by them as it is by what you provide, what you bring to the table.
And Dr. K.K. Agarwal, one of the very eminent cardiologists who passed away recently due to COVID, he was the father of my very first client, Naina. I think what I have learned with him is to keep professional relationships intact. No matter how many arguments you have, no matter how many times you've not agreed on an idea, you may not see face to face, but you have to ultimately come back and work for a common purpose, which is mutual benefit, work. So that's he's again one of the very big inspirations that I have in my life. So yeah.
Superb, yeah, superb. Behind all of us, I think there's a whole village of people. There's so many people to credit, and everyone has done something or the other for us in their own unique way at a particular juncture in life, and some
Absolutely.
for a long time too. Behind every successful person, there is a village.
Yeah. Ganesh,
I think I'm sorry I took that time. Somebody wants to say something. I think.
Yeah, Arundhati wants to say something.
Sure.
Arundhati, you can unmute.
Hi, Amrita.
Hi.
Hi. It was so nice. Hi, Ganesh. It was so nice to watch this conversation, and I could find so many things that are common between us. That's why I thought I should say hi and just say I really enjoyed this conversation, and all the best to you. You're a very good person.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Superb, superb. Yes, I can see that Kaniz has already unmuted herself in preparation for. Yes, please. We can't hear you. Is that good or bad?
Please unmute.
Unmute. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't think I had unmuted myself. I had just raised my hand.
Oh, acha. Nahin. Boliye.
First of all, fabulous. And you can see that I didn't interrupt even once. And that is a very big credit to Ambika, because I really enjoyed hearing every word. It is interesting that you are my daughter's age. I would like to work for you. And
thank you, ma'am. That's an honor.
I like your philosophy. I like your value system. I also think that your being grateful is a fabulous attitude. I also live in that same space. And I don't have a question for you, like other than please employ me.
It will be an honor to have someone like you, because we've interacted briefly on Facebook, I think, and why not? I mean, I don't have anything else to say. I will get in touch with you. I will surely get in touch with you. Thank you, ma'am.
Superb. Thank you, Kaniz, for sharing your thoughts. I completely agree with your take on certain qualities that stand out. So for me, the way I read her and her journey is there's gratitude, there is a deep integrity, there is a practical thinking, there is a bit of discipline, there's energy, there's a need to do, there's a need to do different stuff at different points of time for different people. So, well, that's a random set of adjectives for you. That's how I see you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
That's very, very, I don't know. I'm just humbled, I think. Humbled by the experiences in life, and humbled that so many people are here to encourage me to do more. It's we all learn, and I'm going to learn from all of you as well. So let's try and work together at some point.
And is there anyone else who wants to say something or ask a question? Please unmute yourself. Anyone can do that. Jyoti, I think, wants to.
Yeah. Hi,
Yes,
Jyoti
hi.
here. Ambika and Ganesh, this has been an awesome conversation, and I've sat here throughout riveted, and you're such an inspiring person, Ambika. I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to listen to this conversation. And I think whatever you're doing and whatever you plan to do, especially the entrepreneurship training for kids, is really a brilliant idea. And I wish you all the very best with your venture. And I just wanted to mention, am I audible? Actually, I froze.
Yes, absolutely.
Because everybody's frozen for me on my screen.
No, but we can hear you. Please go on.
And I also wanted to applaud your husband's initiative. I think you said you train service providers to enter.
Yeah.
So I think that's brilliant, because I have a father who's quite ill and an invalid at home, and it's a huge challenge for us. We still haven't been able to find the right kind of help for this. So thank you so much for venturing into this, and really wish you all the very best with everything.
Thank you so much.
Heartfelt wishes for both of you. And I had a question. So I know that when you're in the business that you need to do whatever you need to get the work done. But in my experience, whenever I want to write, if it's a topic that's of interest to me, things just seem to flow. Like I don't need to really think much. Somehow, this is when I'm forced to write about something else. It's such an uphill task. Like I can do all the research I need to do and all that, but the words just don't flow. if my heart is not in the topic. So obviously I could never take this up professionally. But have you experienced this, and how do you tackle that?
Yes, Jyoti. So in the kind of work that we do, there's a constant conflict between whether we want to, whether between writing on a topic or whether whether we agree about what is being written. So, for instance, there have been a lot of times where somebody has voiced an opinion which we don't agree with. So there's a conflict, but at the end of the day, I think after facing that dilemma for a long time, I have come to terms with the fact that it's at the end of the day, it's business, it's work. Which is why I categorize my work into brain and money. Sometimes when your brain is involved, you will write only when you agree with a certain topic. But I think on the second front, you also have to write because you need to work for the money part of it. So somewhere there's that conflict always, and I think it will always exist no matter how how much you've written, how many years, number of years you've written for. That conflict is always going to be there. For the very tiny example of it is the fact that a political party that I don't agree with, and if I have to write something that voices their opinion, I don't know whether I should write it or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but that conflict is always there.
I think you answered that question in your own way during part of the conversation. I would say, the conflict, as you said, will always be there, part of the world. Okay, but you said, you would like to continue to work with people whom you worked with for 5 years or something like that, right? So that's where you want to hold on to those value systems. You want to write about things that you know, that you're familiar with, rather than go and write something that you're not familiar with. I think you answered that question.
But what is also true is that the people that we have worked with for so many number of years are also diversifying their portfolio.
Okay.
So, for instance, this PR agency that I worked with for 5 years initially only had clients in the health tech, e-commerce and fashion space. Now they are diversifying into renewable energy. Now they're doing, data centers. Now they're doing technology in different domains. Now they're doing defense services. So they're also moving out of their comfort space, which means that we are also evidently moving out of our comfort space. So it's a byproduct.
You will grow with them.
It's a byproduct. So when they grow, we grow. When they diversify, we also diversify. So it's only going to be a mutual thing, which is why. And I think relationships are for keep personal or professional. So you can't base your relationship on a certain incident or a certain thing that went off. Of course, in case there is absolutely nothing that can be done except let go of a client, then you have to let go of that client. For instance, if they are constantly bickering about the payment, you can't say that, no, I want to keep my relationship, so I'm going to continue working with them. But I think as far as possible, coming from a legacy organization, what I have learned is hierarchy is important at certain point when you have to learn. Relationships are important because you learn from that hierarchy. Somebody senior to you, because of something, they are not at that position because because they were just promoted. So in Terry, for instance, had I not been through all of that, I would not have learned. And I feel that the startup culture somewhere has also led to a bit of a complacency in attitude, where you have youngsters who don't want to learn, who are not proactive, who don't want to who don't want to go beyond the brief, like I said. So I come from a very, very different school of thought there. So I think it's very important to hold on to those relationships professionally. And I'm very happy to say that I'm in touch with every single person from Terry that I have interacted with so far. So yeah.
Ganesh, I would like to read out the last message from Bhavya. She has written, you were humble enough to say that you are an accidental editor, but the actual thought and mindful action that you have put into everything proves otherwise. I think you are not giving yourself enough credit. Truly inspiring. And I would say I agree with her, because neither you nor Ambika have mentioned an award that she got recently. And maybe Ambika can tell us something about that.
Okay. This is a foundation called yes, Jyoti. I will share my contact info once the call ends. So this is foundation called the GISR Foundation, which works towards the education of girl children. So basically, a lot of girl children, they don't end up completing their education. So because I've gone through that one experience in my life, I think that was something that I very much resonated with. So I do a bit of work with that foundation where I help make modules. We don't take any payment for that. We help make modules. We make lesson plans for them, and I also try and teach whenever there is a possibility of doing so. So they shared that they wanted to recognize that work, and also the work that I've been doing in this space. I was I'll be completely honest, I was very, very hesitant to take this award because the title of the Young Woman Entrepreneur of the Year is a very heavy title. I didn't know whether I should accept it, but I don't know. I think there was much coaxing that went into accepting that award. But I think I want to. That's a space that's very, very close to me. Because that's why I said I want to diversify into educating children from not so privileged. I don't want to use the word underprivileged here. I think we are the underprivileged ones because despite all the resources, we're not really grateful for what we have.
Yeah.
And so I want to help further their education in some way, because I know what it means to be able to go to a regular university or a regular college, because that experience, the whole ambience of a campus and the interaction that you have, and those 3 years are very, very important in the development of a person personally. So that's why I decided to work with that foundation, and hence the award came in place, and they asked for what I have done so far, and that's how it happened.
Very nice, very nice.
But she seems to be like as if you've gone through 2-3 universities at the same time rather than missing it out.
The University of Life.
Oh yes, I think that's the best teacher. But I think until 2020, I was I used to constantly tell myself, I missed out on so much. I used to tell Arvind that I don't have any friends. I don't have any friends. I may have 500 plus friends on Facebook, but if I was to go and call somebody at 3 a.m., I don't know. I think I will go back to my mother-in-law and tell her, go and sit with her and sort of tell her everything. But I think after sort of thinking about it this year, I've realized that I don't think it matters. There have been a lot of other people, and I think for the longest time I've been friends with people who are either younger than me or older than me. So that's also one common connection between me and my husband, that we have friends who are elderly or who are young.
Different age groups, right? Not from ours.
Yes. So, and that's also the place where our common thing for working for the elderly comes, because in our family itself, we have many elders who have, come back and said that, we have not met for so many years. We want a common place where we can come and interact. So, we were thinking, maybe take up a land, build a small sort of a getaway, and have all the elders come there maybe for a month or 15 days and get back with their cousins and interact. That's an opportunity they don't get. So all of that sort of comes from there. So we're like, you can come here, have a say a bonfire, or just get back and reminisce about your olden times and do whatever. So we're all actually inclined towards that cause. So that's where it comes from.
What would you tell the crowd here, all of us here, in terms of how do we look at content now, how quickly content is changing? We spoke about the various morphing, the facets that are emerging now, the potential that's emerging now, the formats, etc. Right? So while editing is a common thread that runs across all of us, writing is a common thread for many of us. How would you encourage people to look at content and in its ever-changing form today? And, in terms of content creation, in terms of adopting it, being part of this change that's happening, what would you say?
I think the first thing is to not be resistant to change. It has to happen, right? Change is the only constant. So I'll be honest, and I would say that I got bored of copy editing after a certain point. After having done so much of copy editing, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I also think it is only natural to progress, to make a progression to different forms of content after a point. Sure. No one person can be doing the same thing for the long, even if no single organization, no individual can be doing the same thing for many years. Right. And even if you are, if you have been in an industry for a certain number of years, I'm sure you have diversified in some way, maybe sometimes without you even knowing that you have diversified, which is why to Mr. Venkatraman's question, I said, if I'm working with an agency for 5 years, correct, that agency would have diversified in those 5 years. And consequently, I would also diversify with them. So, I don't have a PR background. I don't even have a content writing background for that matter. I was pushed into this by accident. So whatever I have learned is on the job. Right. And over time, I have adapted to the changes that I felt, was the need of the market at that point, or was the need of the hour at that point. And probably also was a need for my business to pick up.
Yes,
yeah.
And so it will stand you in good stead going forward, something
yes,
you can
capitalize on. And one thing is to never stop learning. That's a very cliched statement, but it is true. Because you can't be redundant in an industry, because content is a very active industry, especially with very so dynamic. Many forms of very dynamic, so many forms of content being churned out now. I mean, yes. Again, I would take the example of Clubhouse. Who would have thought that Facebook and Instagram, people are not accessing Facebook, Instagram so much nowadays? They are. But Clubhouse is such a huge platform in terms of being able to interact with people that you only thought that you could get in touch with. So it could be musicians, it could be the CEO of big ventures, it could be investors. I mean, you're doing a one-on-one with angel investors, you're doing a one-on-one with, say, a playback singer. You are getting into rooms where you are hearing people from different walks of life. That's something that you could not imagine from our generation back then. And the generation today has access to so much of content in different forms. Right. Even regional content. I mean, who would have thought? You have a mobile, you have internet access, and there you are. The moment you have internet access, there are startups which are, encouraging content builders to just take a video of something they like randomly. It could be nature, it could be a shot of your favorite animal, and then sort of upload it on the platform, and they sell that content, and then, you make money out of it. So content has diversified into so many different forms. It's unimaginable. It was unimaginable in the times that we come from. So I think it's very important to reinvent yourself, keep learning, keep reading a lot. In fact, the one very funny example is my husband's venture. My husband's not on social media. He's not on any social media. So he says that, no, I don't think I should put anything up on LinkedIn or Facebook. Wo tum karo. Facebook is all about all of this. So I keep telling him, no, I think if you're doing some work, if you're doing good work, if you are growing, I think it's also important to project that work. Not because you want accolades, not because you want to highlight yourself as an individual, but because then you can come across like-minded individuals and organizations which are willing to collaborate with you and do that kind of work. And
a lot of connections help you grow. Spawned by that.
Yes, help you grow. Yesterday, he had a panel discussion on the way forward in terms of the employability scenario in caregiving industry. I said, you should put this up on LinkedIn, because, what if you get suggestions from like-minded organizations on, how to make caregiving a very it's a job that it's a job where caregivers are trained. They are not even 12th pass. So you could be somebody out of school and they can train you to become a caregiver. But how do you tell them that you are helping in nation building? If you are helping a larger segment of the society by doing what you're doing, because caring for the elderly is not everyone's cup of tea. As home caregivers, we have experienced that. So how do you, tell an individual that what you're doing is not just for money, what you're doing is not just for, buying a mobile.
Playing an important role somewhere.
Exactly. Yes. So those are the aspects that were highlighted yesterday. And I said, you should definitely put this up on social media, because, it's not just for random content. It is also to make network. It is also to collaborate. So I think as editors and as being in an industry which is so dynamic and so ever changing, it's important to also grow yourself and embrace change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. Superb. If there are no further questions, I think we can wrap up now. what do you all say? Does anyone want to say something? Ask, share. All right. So Vivek, shall we?
That was such a...
I know. Accepted with
thanks.
gratitude. Vivek, so shall we wrap this up?
She's confirming a job offer,
Yes. So as I said, I won't be like a huge organization, but in definitely in some capacity, I think we all have to interact at some point, and it will be my pleasure to also learn in the process. And because I'm only grateful to this community for helping me reach where I am today. So obviously, it goes without saying.
So you can key in your email ID there, Ambika, in the chat box. Why don't you do it now?
Sure. So I'm giving you both my professional and personal email IDs for anyone who wants to get in touch. This is my professional ID, and this is my personal ID. Also, Vivek, to answer that question of Ambika Shankar and Ambika Arvind, again, it's a dilemma because I have developed both as Ambika Arvind and Ambika Shankar. The venture, everything that goes out on behalf of the venture is Ambika Shankar, because I wanted to dedicate it to my father. Because see, he would have been the happiest to see me where I am today, as every parent would be. But I think for him, with the limited resources that he had, if he saw that his children have reached a point where he can proudly say that somebody would have said that, oh, you are Ambika's father, he would have been the proudest, I think. So I associate this venture with him, and which is why everything to do.
Also because like you said earlier, Ambika, he pushed himself, put himself in some bit of discomfort and uncharted territory in supporting you and giving you access, in encouraging you to do better, Yes.
So I think that is why, and Ambika Arvind, because I think the extension of my personality would not have been possible without becoming an Arvind later in life. So yeah, and I think a lot of my journey as an entrepreneur started after marriage. An area where I think a lot of women are still not able to come out of a shell. So and one more place where I'm very, very very keen on collaborating is if you as a woman entrepreneur, or if you as a woman are in a capacity or in a position to encourage other women to come out of their shell in some way, I think you should do it. Be it through your words or actions or anything. A lot of us need to come out. It's like it takes a whole village to raise a child, they say. So I think, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Which I did not do for a longest time. I think help is there everywhere. You just have to ask for it. And I'm sure people do help you.
Yeah, all right, Ambika, for clarifying the distinction between the Ambika Shankar and Ambika Arvind. And Dr. Venkat and Ganesh, they both mentioned the energy, and I think maybe Terry is responsible for that. The word energy is in that acronym.
Absolutely.
I would like to add one more here. See, one important point that I felt sensed throughout today's discussion. See, you mentioned that thing about modern startups and all that, something like that you mentioned, right? See, I think the part of the good thing there that you've gone through is you've been willing. What you said, accept changes. Change is the only constant thing that you mentioned. Number one. Number two is being willing to go through the mill. You have to learn, you have to go through the mill, whatever it is, whatever be your work. It's editing or carpentry or whatever it is.
Whatever be the field.
Being ready to go through the mill for some years. I think that is very, very crucial for any human being. And that part is imbibed, I think we'll shine wherever, whatever be our field.
Right.
I think that you've been very clear about, and it's come to you instinctively, and I think that is why you've been able to, do so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. See, that's where, and I think that's what is lacking I don't know if I'm sounding unfair here, but that's what is lacking in the generation today.
I agree. That's why I'm mentioning that.
Yes.
Because see, they are for one, they don't want feedback. They're not willing to accept feedback. They don't want to. I mean, I'm sure they have so many things to experiment with. They have a whole lot of information access. They have everything in their at their disposal. What they don't have, I think, is the drill. They haven't been able to go through the drill that a lot of the older generation has gone through, and that's true personally also, not just professionally but personally also. You have to go through a whole lot of drill to be able to
make something in life.
Yes, absolutely. The drill word is the keyword here.
So somewhere here, well, of course, there are exceptions even in this generation, every generation, about, the kind of people you're talking about. So people looking for feedback, willing to go through the grind, looking at quality and, not quick routes to success. I think it's also a problem of surplus. Yeah. We came up from a generation of a lot of constraints, but otherwise limited capacity, limited resources. And, one had to really ask and try and find and wait it out, So that was the time in scooters, we had to wait for some 2 years to get a scooter, So we've grown up in that kind of a milieu to today where there is a problem of surplus. It becomes a problem in this context, in the way we're talking about. So there is that issue that
please go ahead. I'll add. Please.
No. I'm just saying that's one observation that I've had about why certain things also lead to certain kinds of behavior and how one needs to manage that later.
I have one point. I don't know how many of you will agree with me, but see, we often tell them that हमारे time पे हम lamp post के नीचे पढ़ते थे and all that. But somewhere I think because we have gone through that drill, are we also not trying to give them access to everything? I mean, see, we didn't have access, but we feel that okay, our children should not go through what we went through. So we do try and give them access, and then blame them for not going through the drill somewhere. So we give them a computer, we give them a phone, we give them a laptop, we give them all the wherewithal, and then we tell them that तुम lamppost के नीचे बैठ के क्यों नहीं पढ़ रहे हो? So that I think that's very unfair to them.
No, I think a lot of it starts at home. I personally believe that a lot of it starts from home before you put things on society, because all sorts of changes happen there, and I think there are lots of motherhood changes happening where we don't have control over that, but you do have control over what percolates into your house.
Absolutely.
What you're feeding your children. So,
and I think somewhere for me, I'm thankful that I've grown up in a joint family. I came into a joint family. That's also something that helped, because the whole milieu of adjusting to people and, adjusting to people, adjusting to circumstances. And somewhere the elders have that influence over the youngsters to say that itna bas hai, isse zyada don't go beyond this. So, you have that thing with elders. So I think that also helps somewhere. But I think we have to put our foot down somewhere and say that this is what we will provide you and this is what you have to work for.
You have to moderate.
Yes, we have to moderate. And my father-in-law says something very nice, which he's been re-emphasizing ever since we had kids. He says, when there's a plant that is growing, only trim, and don't try to beautify it. Just try to trim the edges and give it a way to grow. Don't go and shape it into something that it's not. So that's something that he's been following with his kids also, and that's something that we've sort of imbibed from him. So, yeah.
Good. Yes, Vivek, I think we should.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's almost one.
And thanks, Ambika, for a fabulous interview. And there are a lot of glowing comments in the chat box, which I will share with you.
Yes, and thank you so much. I'll reply to everyone.
Towards the end of the interview, we were talking about the younger generation, and if, like, as a parting comment, if it's possible for Bhavya to unmute herself and share her feedback or response to.
She just typed something in, I think. No, I saw a comment from her. But yes, you can tell us, Bhavya,
Yes, she has unmuted.
Everyone, I'm glad that I was introduced to this forum by Sir Vivek. And this is the first session I'm attending. And honestly, throughout this session, I feel so humbled because I think I'm the youngest member here right now. I'm 20. I'm pursuing English honors at Lady Shriram College for Women.
Okay.
And I mean, the whole session, it was not just enriching in a way that would help an editor, but also I think the intention, the intention, the mindfulness that you've put into everything. That's inspiring even as a person. You have not just done this with the vision of an entrepreneur, but also with a very, very humane value to it. So I think I'm really inspired at this moment, and I would love to attend more of these sessions.
Lovely.
Kind words. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Bhavya. Thanks, Ganesh. Thanks, Ambika. And thanks to all the participants who stayed for almost 2 hours. And my last comment would be to Ambika. Like she mentioned crowdfunding at the start of the interview, which she didn't pursue. But I think for the social entrepreneurship thing, which she mentioned for socially disadvantaged children, this is something that she can try.
Absolutely. I do intend to do that because for content writing as a profession, I don't know how many people would pitch in. Because see, again, one thing that I wanted to say was content editing is often taken as a bridge profession. Everyone is a content writer. I have people coming from my family and telling me, hum to likhte hai na, I will also write for you. And then I have mails coming to me which says, this is with regards to your query. So the moment I see that line, I'm like, okay, rejected. I'm not going to even go beyond this line. So I feel it's become a bridge profession now. It's like, when you want to transition in your career path, you become a writer and then move to some other journey. But I think it's a very, it's a very enriching profession. It's a very, very enriching field because you have access to so much content, so many different sectors. You get to read up on so much at different levels. I think that's something to be very, very happy about, and that should be one point of inspiration for you to constantly keep learning more and diversifying. So I think that's crowdfunding. Yes, for the social venture, definitely. I have some ideas, so I will definitely try to get in touch with any of you who's interested in pitching in some form, even in terms of teaching kids what you know. That's something that's lacking today. So yeah. Definitely, ma'am. Kanis, ma'am, you are on my radar always henceforth. So,
thanks, Ambika. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, and we will be back with another session.
Yes. Thanks, Ambika. Thanks for a wonderful
Ganesh. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you, folks. Bye.
Bye.
So.